about this change in A New Design for Living on page 50. We are all living in a world of continual change, a world in which thought, things, and experiences are all in a constant state of flux. It is the very nature of the universe that there should be continual change and variation. It is a living world, the creation of a living creative intelligence, not a static world. But behind that which changes, behind that which causes the change, we have found that there is something stable and changeless, something eternal upon which all the external events depend for their very existence. Behind the endless process of change and the infinite variety of experience and expression, there is that which does not change. If you'll take a look at the screen, thank you, Dan. And let's speak this affirmation for the month into being for us.
Today, I accept change as a part of the grand design, which is therefore for me. I change my thinking to align with ultimate reality, spiritual truth, and my life is a glorious adventure, increasingly filled with more of every good thing. Thank you, Nancy. So this month, we've been talking about reality, getting real, about ultimate reality. And so we've talked about getting real about relationships and getting real about life lessons. And last week, the one that's really sticking with me is the story about the river and the clouds, the river chasing the clouds, and just beginning to realize that there is this underpinning, this foundation, this supreme being upon which all life exists. And so as we continue to return to that over and over again, we find that things then begin to become clearer to us as we look out upon our world, and we're able then to come from a more stable place and not be pulled in all different directions by what's going on in the media or what seems to be going on in our lives, but we stay firmly grounded and rooted in the source that really truly makes a difference in our lives. So I want to read this beautiful passage from 2 Corinthians to set us up for today, because today is about transformation. It's about change. And so this passage of 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 17 says, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he or she is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come." Now this Christ, anyone is in Christ, this is talking about a state of consciousness, of oneness, unity, wholeness, that was so beautifully demonstrated by Jesus in his life and by many masters throughout all time and all different spiritual traditions. But we know that this is the underlying meaning, is that when we give ourselves to this greater good, this presence, that things will change. Things will change. And so some of you may be sitting there thinking, well, I do want transformation. I want to have that transformation of consciousness, but forget the change. Leave I'm not truly interested in all the change that goes with it. So there's a tendency of us to do that. I don't know, and it might even be on just a subtle level. It's because we tend to be more comfortable. We call it the comfort zone, having things kind of go along the way they usually are. And so this requires an awareness that it's not only the change within, but when there's change within, there's change in our external world. And so whether we like change or not, creation is designed for change, the ever unfolding nature of the divine. And so we have more and more growth opportunities, as I talked about earlier, opportunities to grow and to transform. And that requires change. And there's a saying that I think summarizes this so beautifully. It is, change is inevitable, but personal growth is optional. So does everybody get that? So even though things are constantly changing all around us, we can, because of who we are, stay sort of stagnant in our thinking and our perspective. So it takes some intention there. It takes some willingness to say, okay, what must I learn? How must I grow in order to express more of this divinity that I am in truth? So I want to break those two pieces of that change is inevitable and growth is optional. I want to let's look at those a little more deeply. So change is inevitable. Some of us are really good at embracing good, so-called good changes, what we figure are good changes. And others don't like any change whatsoever, because even the good changes can feel uncomfortable. Any of us who knows what it is to start a new job or buy a new home or give birth to a baby or whatever it might be, change has what psychologists called a certain level of stress to it, even if it's good change. So we need, it's something to be aware of. And many of us fear change that comes from crisis. So the point of all of this is that whatever the change might be and however we call it, whether we call it good or bad, that's an opinion. In truth, everything in the universe is designed for our unfoldment. And underneath all of that is a strong, solid, firm foundation that supports us in moving through the change in a more graceful way if we remain aware of it. So whatever the change, losing a job, starting a job, getting divorced, getting married, being forced to move, moving into your dream home, transition of a loved one, or having a baby. Again, all of these things are supported by this strong foundation of spirit itself. So actually, that saying that says there's only one thing that's certain and that life is change, how many of you have heard that one before? I'd say there are two things that are certain. That yes, change is inevitable, and the second thing that I think is also true is the one presence and the one power that supports us through it. So really two things, change and God, I think are both two certain things in life. And God is what we call the changeless reality, the unmanifest intelligence, presence, life that permeates everything, that is the source of everything. And it is a firm foundation on which we stand. That beautiful quote that Nancy just read said it so beautifully when it talked about, all the constant flux and change, because this is it's a unfolding creation that's always taking place, but that there's something eternal upon which all the external events depend for their existence. Behind the endless process of change, the infinite variety of experience and expression, there is that with a capital T, which does not change. And the master teacher, Jesus, the Christ, compares living from spiritual teaching, these spiritual teachings of truth, like building our house on a firm foundation that can weather anything. And so I want to read this beautiful passage because it's just such a reminder. Whoever comes to me, hears my teachings, and does nothing is like a man who has built a house on earth without a foundation. And when the floods arose, the stream beat vehemently against that house, and immediately it fell. And the ruin of that house was great. But he who hears my words and follows them is like a man building a house who has dug deep and laid the foundation on the rock against which the stream beat vehemently, but could not shake it, for it was founded on the rock. Founded on the rock. That beautiful rock of the Spirit itself, that changeless reality. And a rock is such a great image of that because rocks are so solid. They seem so, oh, beautiful, Dan. Great. And just a beautiful expression or an analogy of the solidity and of the foundation of Spirit itself. So while change is inevitable, our advancement is optional. Okay? It's a choice. And each and every change, as we've talked about multiple times, is a catalyst, if we allow it to be, for our advancement. So when change comes, Ernest Holmes says, welcome it with a smile on the lips and a song in the heart. And that can be a challenge at times to remember that, but it's such a great thing to remember. What if we could truly welcome change with a smile on our lips and a song in our heart? How different that would be. We would be spiritual masters, wouldn't we? Because we know that it's all for us. Helen Keller, a spiritual master in her own right, once said, when one door of happiness closes, another opens. But so often we look so long at the closed door that we do not see the one which is opened before us. Anybody have that experience of looking at the past and, oh my gosh, I lost this? You're so focused on the past. Oh, look what I lost, that it's hard to see the open door when it shows up before us. So, to this, New Thought minister, Reverend Noel McGinnis, responded, yeah, I know when one door closes, the other opens, but the hallway is a real, and you fill in the blank. So the path from one to the other can be really uncomfortable. That being outside our comfort zone that we talk about so often. Well, there's a beautiful story about a young woman by the name of Jennifer that's in Gary Zukav's Soul Stories that I think is such a great example of being in that hallway. So here's the way the story begins. As Jennifer is sitting in the dean's office, she's in nursing school. She's just completed her first year of nursing school. And the dean is looking at her coursework that she's had so far, and he said, you're missing a key course here. What happened? And immediately she goes into shock. He said, you can't go on to the second year until you complete this course. And she said, okay, so when is it? And he said, well, it's not till next summer. And here she is talking to him at the end of the school year, and he's talking about a year from then before she needs to take that class before she can start again. So that's a whole year of waiting. And so she's her mind is racing, and she's saying, well, can't I take that course the same time I'm taking my second year? And he said, no, the rules are the rules. You've got to take that course. You've got to take that course before you go on to the second year. And, a background with Jennifer is she is a single mother, living with her father while she's going through school. She's pulled all of her resources together to go through nursing school so she can be self-supporting and support herself and her young daughter. She's worked her heart out to complete this full year of nursing school, and here she finds she needs to wait another year. And she's totally distraught. She goes back and talks to her advisor and said, what happened? And the advisor takes a look at it and says, I'm sorry, and sorry for the mistake, but there's nothing that can be done at this point. So Jennifer gets herself 2 jobs so she can kind of keep the expenses going. And she, she just sort of lets go. I mean, what else can she do at this point? And a month later, her father is hit. Her aging father is hit by a speeding car, ends up in the hospital, and he is incoherent. He's not able to recognize people, or he sees people that aren't there, and then he has all these physical issues from the from being hit, and his health begins to decline, and finally the insurance money is all used up, and she finds herself having to sell his house and buy a smaller one. And so she's in the midst of all of that. All of this is going on in this year, between and so she and so then in the midst of all of that, shifting him into the nursing home, shortly after that, he makes his transition. He passes away, and so then she's in a state of grief on top of all of this. So when all is said and done, and it's time for her to start the summer course, she looks back on the year and she says, "You know what? That was not a mistake. I didn't see the bigger picture. That was not a mistake that I didn't take that course, because otherwise I would have not been able to be present for my father. I would have not been able to handle all of the, I mean, think of the big thing. Each one of those things is a big thing in and of itself. Buying a house, selling a house, being a single parent, caring for a daughter, um, and caring for her father, and all of the different transitions, and then grieving over his loss. A lot, all at the same time. And yet she finds that she has grown in confidence because of the things she's been able to do. She's grown in self-esteem, and she's now ready to move into nursing school as a whole new person. She's transformed as a process of the challenges. We all have this opportunity. Now, this is such a beautiful example. These are true stories, apparently, that Gary Zukav has collected. And what a beautiful, shining example of what can happen. And I'm sure it was not pretty. The hallway was not pretty when she was going through it. It was really looking back over it in retrospect that she realized the amazing gift that it was. Ernest Holmes says, "When change comes, we should welcome it with a smile on our lips and a song in our hearts." If we go with that intention and we remember stories like this, and I know many of us have stories like this in our lives, things that have been difficult, and we can look back on them and say, wow, how I've grown. This has been a catalyst for my growth. So our growth hinges on this basic principle, that every change is leading us to something greater. Repeat that after me. Every change is leading me. Every change is leading me to something greater. Let's say it again. Every change is leading me to something greater. Another open door. So here's a great affirmation. It's short. It's easy to remember whenever any change is coming up and you find your heart going into fear and worry. Is only good can come from this. Again, this is the way we pick our thoughts, like we would pick a good piece of fruit or vegetable. Only good can come from this. Would you repeat that after me? Only good can come from this. Great. And the great spiritual teaching is that before you call, I will answer. that divine presence within us. We are guided by a universal intelligence, a universal mind, an all-knowing mind that steers us in the direction of good if we turn within and listen. And there are spiritual traditions that have, and I know that in Les Miserables, every half hour the nuns were reminded to go within by the ringing of a bell, and they do this in Buddhism, and I'm sure they do this in other spiritual traditions as well. Those, and Islam, they have the bells that remind people to stop, drop, and pray. What if we could consider change as that bell to wake us up, go within, and listen, and connect to that source of infinite good? So I want to take it one step further and get really radical. What if we were to give thanks for the change? So not only claim it as good, but give thanks for it. We know Thanksgiving is a very high vibration. It's the vibration of the Most High that calls in more good. So try this one on. I'm so grateful for this growth opportunity.
I'm so grateful for this growth opportunity.
Great. So, Dr. Holmes, in Practical Application of Science of Mind, wrote this: there are going to be changes in our lives from hour to hour and day to day, and we cannot escape them. It is the nature of the universe. And I love this line. Let us accept change and make the most of it and capitalize on it. Let us accept it, make the most of it, and capitalize upon it. Because the action of the law never changes, but the direction of the action is always up to us. Every time we choose a new thought, like we pick a really nice piece of fruit or vegetable, every time we choose a thought, we are changing the direction of the universal law. We are changing that direction. So what I'd like you to do, and let me finish this quote. Life can become a glorious adventure, increasingly filled with more of every good thing, as we gradually or suddenly come to change our pattern of thinking so that it embraces more of those good things. So let's practice accepting and capitalizing on change right now. I'd like you to turn within, close your eyes, think of a change that you are maybe experiencing now. Some change that you're moving through right now. Everybody have something? And then to that change, I want you to say, you can keep your eyes closed as you do this, only good can come from this.
Only good can come from this.
And then I'm going to also offer something that's more powerful, a bit more powerful. I'm not going to say it's it's a bit more powerful. It's by Emma Curtis Hopkins. And this is something that I have memorized and I use a lot. This too is good.
This too is good.
This too is God.
This too is God.
This too is for me.
This too is for me.
And you do this one with attitude, this last one. So really put an attitude into this. And I demand to see a blessing in it.
And I demand to see a blessing in it.
And let's say together, and so it is. Blessings.